This is Paul Schneiderman today on the 110th edition of the Sports Untold podcast, also on Rainier Avenue Radio. And my special guest today is Mazvita Maraire. I will share that my podcast is now on YouTube, Amazon, Google, iTunes, Podbeam. And you can also go to sportsuntoldpodcast.com. It's also running on RainierAvenueRadio.world. Let me get back to you, Mazvita Maraire. Mazvita's been a colleague of mine in Rainier Avenue Radio for over 4 years. Mazvita is the host of the Seattle Sports Weekly show. He is also a Pro Football Writers Association member and a North American soccer reporter. Mazvita is the founder and CEO of CascadiaSports.net, a website I recommend that people go to. There's a lot about Seattle sports on that website. Mazvita is a Roosevelt High School graduate, my alma mater as well. Mazvita played college soccer. He's also, I believe, a Seattle U color analyst for the men's and women's teams. Mazvita, thank you for coming on Sports Untold, also on Rainier Avenue Radio.
I am so honored to be on your dual platform. So, Paul, thanks for having me.
Well, I'm honored to have you, Mazvita. I've been intending to get you on for a while. We're finally doing it in January 2022 as we encounter a lot of interesting issues in our world right now, and we will bring out some of those issues today in our discussion. Well, Mazvita, I want to kind of learn a little bit more about your interest in sports. So why don't you share with us how you got the sports bug, but also I know you were born in Zimbabwe. Can you share a little bit about the nation of Zimbabwe with my viewers and listeners?
Yeah. Well, that's a trick question.
No tricks, no tricks.
No. Great question. I wasn't expecting that one. Oh, my homeland, absolutely. Born in Zimbabwe, and Zimbabwe is just on the southwest of Africa, so it's above South Africa, and to the right is Maputo, Namibia. So just
Just a second, Mazvita. Hey, Lucius, I can't see Mazvita. Just checking in. Go ahead, Maz. There we go. Thank you.
No, absolutely,
Yeah,
the tech. So, yeah, and it was a British colony, John Cecil Rhodes, and then independence 1980, and so it's been its own, solitary rule by then. Robert Mugabe, and now Managua is the president. Managua. So that, and it's unfortunately there's no exciting, beautiful country in terms of Vic Falls is over there, one of the seven wonders of the world, and it's really like any other city. You know what I mean? It's got potholes sometimes when you go from the main city to the country, and so other than that, it really is. It's just like any other city that you're going to find, especially that had British colony rule. So really, just to finish that up, so it's really the house is all brick in terms of that. You know what you can expect from, I wouldn't say early colonial from here, but more in terms of what you found on the East Coast. Actually, early colonial, like the Boston, in terms of how the houses are built with brick and all those things. Other than that, very sunny, beautiful landscape, countryside, really amazing, and just amazing people in terms of the indigenous. So from there, as I said, came to the United States. That would be the typical African back in the 70s, where a lot of the Africans came for education, Nigerian, Zimbabweans. So uncle was at the University of Washington, decided to bring his older brother, my dad, mom, sister. So we hightailed it to Seattle. And then, as you mentioned, went to Roosevelt High School. But it was then I was always into sports. I was into reporting. My dad, PhD professor, mom's a doctor, and mom's a neurosurgeon. But dad was a reporter for the BBC on a part-time basis. And I was like, well, that's kind of cool. But I always wanted to do that. And then sports was always my calling. And I loved it. And the reason why is just because it's once you're on the field, right? I'm sure we'll talk about everything else. But once you're on the field, whether it's 5 against 5, 11 against 11, 9-on-9, it's that container there that's a level playing field once the whistle or whatever blows. So that was always my attraction to playing and covering it.
Well, it's interesting to hear more about your background. It seems like you have very sophisticated parents, Mazvita. And I want to ask you another question or two about Zimbabwe. Now, was Rhodesia the prior country before Zimbabwe? And wasn't Rhodesia basically like a white apartheid state?
Yes. Yeah, John Cecil Rhodes. What it was a British colony. And John Cecil Rhodes, there was North Rhodesia and South Rhodesia. And so John Cecil Rhodes was well, he was in charge of Zimbabwe under apartheid. And great question in that Zimbabwe and South Africa were very like two brothers in the fight against apartheid. So when Zimbabwe was trying to get its independence and the freedom fighters, and their war, the way Zimbabwe got its independence was kind of how the Vietnamese, right? When the Vietnam War, you had the North and the South. So the strategy was to bring the fight into the bush. So you had the guerrilla freedom fighters in there, and they were trained. So those guerrilla fighters were trained in South Africa, and then came in, and then the flip flop when South Africa was fighting its apartheid war. The freedom fighters were stationed in Zimbabwe, and that's where you kind of hid them because of the borders were close enough. And then 1980, Zimbabwe got its independence and absolutely did away with apartheid.
Well, I think that history is very fascinating. I certainly have learned a lot in your discussion. I guess I have one more question about Zimbabwe. Is there a tourism industry in Zimbabwe?
Absolutely, one of the top in the world. Maybe a little self pride there promoting, but absolutely, like I said, Vic Falls, which is one of the seven wonders of the world, Victoria Falls, Niagara Falls, the pyramids. So the Paris, the Leaning Tower. So yeah, it's a bustling tourism industry, and you not only have Vic Falls, but you also have your uh shoot, I forget now. Well, game parks and things like that, and so you can go there, and it's escaping me, but yeah, so you can go and tour and see the safaris. Thank you. Yeah, so it's a bustling safari as well. All kinds of different safaris that you can do. That's regulated. And what I like about Zimbabwe is there is a regulation in terms of people coming and poaching and minimizing, people taking elephant, tusks and all that. So Zimbabwe's done a good job of that bustling industry, and I would invite anybody to go to Zimbabwe. It's incredible. One of the top golf courses that's there, the Harare Country Club, and so yeah.
Well, I just fascinating. We talk about all sorts of stuff on Sports Untold, so I like to learn about countries and cultures. So thank you for sharing. Paul Schneiderman of Sports Untold podcast, also on Rainier Avenue Radio with Mazvita Maraire. And I encourage any listeners or viewers today that are watching us on Facebook Live to feel free to have add some questions if you have any for Mazvita. Mazvita, you are a North American soccer reporter, and I want to tell you something. I am not the most knowledgeable soccer fan in the world, so when I ask you a soccer 2 question, please bear with me because I wanted to share my knowledge, my very minimal knowledge with you and the listeners. The Sounders MLS franchise was launched in 2009. Who would you say is the greatest Sounders MLS player who has played for the team since the franchise was launched in 2009? Montero, Casey Keller. Pick one.
I gotta go with my guy Clint Dempsey, and we have this kind of nice discussion in the press box all the time. But to your point, they've been amazing. The franchise did a really good job. And if I may, Paul, before 2090, the Sounders played in the North American Soccer
Correct.
League And also, and then when that league folded, they kept on playing the equivalent to maybe like a double A, triple A, and they've always been a community franchise. And some of those people that you mentioned, that's what's amazing, is Casey Keller, Olympia, a local boy, if you will. They brought him over, and the Sounders have done a really amazing job of always being a community team. So Clint Dempsey for me, why was because American born, he was prolific scorer, and so he went overseas, Tottenham, and Fulham. It was Fulham. He's one of the greatest American soccer players. Fulham. Then Seattle brought him here. I thought for me that was a demarcation of them bringing a superstar at that time. In terms of once the Sounders were a Major League Soccer team, they were like, okay, great, we are getting this big stars. Now it's evolved since then. They've been, bigger players, but I would, and Casey, I would be remiss, amazing, and he set the standard for goaltenders as well. So, you know what? I'll say Casey, but Clint Dempsey by a nose.
So since I'm talking about the 2000, since the 2009 version of the Sounders was established, you would pick Clint Dempsey as as the greatest Sounders player of this version of the franchise so far. So okay, sounds like a fair answer. Something I also want to ask you, Mazvita, about the MLS is I chat sometimes with pretty knowledgeable soccer fans, and I want to get your perspective on this. And they tend to say, I mean, there's a range of opinions, that the MLS may be at best in about the middle if you compare the MLS to other soccer pro leagues around the world. Some say maybe even lower middle. How do you rank the MLS compared to other pro soccer leagues around the world? It's not the English Premier League, but how would you put it in the middle? Help me quantify how you would sort of rank the MLS.
Sure. I mean, I think it's climbing, and specifically, it's now in the top 10. They'd always, when the World Cup was played here, part of the reason why the World Cup was here was, hey, create a one of the stipulations that FIFA makes the football association bodies is they said you need a professional soccer league. So uh, Major League Soccer was created, and there was always talk about, what, Don Garber, the commissioner, we want to be one of the top leagues. I think, like I said, probably in the top 10, probably I would say six. Let's take a look, because if you, to your point, the English Premier League, the Bundesliga, La Liga, which is in Germany, Eredivisie, which is the Dutch. What else is there?
The most South American leagues are great too, aren't they?
They are, and it's been really good now in terms of that's where now you have this great battle between La Liga, which is Mexican, if you will, and also and the North American Soccer League. And to some extent, the Major League Soccer hasn't quite caught up there because the two leagues are now, there's certain players go back and forth, and with you having players from over there come here, Nicholas Ladero and some of those other ones coming and being a little, making success. But as a team and as a league, Major League Soccer, I would say, is behind the the Spanish, and so Liga MX, if you will. And so part of that, why would I say that, is because there's a couple of tournaments that they have, the Champions League that they have, and so right now the Liga MX always dominates those. And so I think it's climbing. I think the switch now, credit to Major League Soccer, is the young players. They used to kind of have the old players, right? Kind of the aged out American players that were here. To my, like I was saying, Clint Dempsey went overseas, right, at the height. He came back. What you're having now is the colleges are bringing out quality American soccer players now. Stanford, I mean, you can take a look at the Sounders drafted two players yesterday, um, one from SU and one just from here, from the UW, right? And both of those made it to the NCAA division playoffs, and they got as far as the semifinals. But um, so Jordan Morris is an example, right? Played at Stanford and now he, played here. So the younger players are coming in, and where Major League Soccer is having to make a decision, or the player does, is do I go overseas? And that's what a lot of the players are now doing. And that's creating a void here. But because of the quality of players, you're now seeing the league actually thriving and having better quality players. Like right now, the U.S. men's national soccer team, a lot of those players aren't playing in Major League Soccer. You've got players like Dest and all those guys, and they're playing overseas. They're playing for the Barcelonas, and which is and Chelsea, Christian Pulisic, if you will. That's a testament in terms of soccer in America itself. What's changed is when those guys are overseas, the people that are now taking those places are pretty decent. You're Jordan Morris's. So, long-winded answer, Paul, but American Soccer League keeps on climbing. And I just don't know if it'll ever get past 7 or 8, given, you can't compete with the English Premier League, the Bundesliga, English Premier League by far, right? And the money that's there, and that's just that's like the NFL. You know what I mean? That's what it is. So
A lot of great information there, Mazvita. Let me just see if I can break this down with a baseball analogy. A lot of American sports fans sort of relate to baseball analogies. Would you say the MLS is maybe a double A or triple A kind of league, if you were to use a major league an analogy with pro baseball?
yeah, with the quantifier now, I would say double A, only because if I remember, you follow baseball as well. A double A player sometimes can skip the triple A. You know what I
True,
mean? But
true.
so I would say it's a hybrid of both. And why I say that, Paul, is because to simplify the answer, let's say triple A. But there is now players. Major League Soccer is a lot of those players are doing well in Major League Soccer, but it's a hit and miss right now if you play Major League Soccer and then go overseas. I don't know if that answers it, but I would it
Good
definitely,
points.
yeah, I would
As a
say
very casual fan, it seemed to me when the MLS had David Beckham several years ago, just watching it from afar, it seemed like, is this going to help the MLS climb in pro sports and soccer circles that Beckman played for in the MLS? But anyhow, that may be a little superficial point, but it struck me that that was sort of a
well,
breakthrough, wasn't it?
it's actually a great point. I think that the Major League Soccer didn't want to do what the North American Soccer League when it went belly up, and so they were bringing over the hill English players. I mean that, and you have Georgie Best. You have some of the most amazing players, but the problem is they were not past their prime, past their prime, And so Major League Soccer did a fantastic job of bringing those players, the Beckhams, for a while, for the recognition, for TV, and then kind of, ease them out of, move them out of the way, and then kind of went young.
Lot there. Very educational, especially for a guy like me who's trying to learn more about soccer in general. Paul Schneiderman again hosts the Sports Untold podcast with Mazvita Maraire, also a host on our Rainier Ave Radio show, which I encourage people to listen to. I enjoy Mazvita's show, CL Sports Weekly. Mazvita, I want to ask you about the Kraken. You cover them a bit on your CascadiaSports.net website, which I also encourage people to take a look at. And I want to ask you something about the Kraken's current position in the standings. They're in the last place of their division. And here's my question for you. Do you have any concerns that the Kraken craze in Seattle could be minimized if the Kraken continue to play at this basement level? Is this a prospective long-term problem for the Kraken if in the next couple of years they can't play playoff caliber kind of hockey?
Great question. I think the Las Vegas Knights a couple years ago kind of created an unrealistic expectation. They're the last expansion team. They get in and they make it all the way to Stanley Cup. So everybody's like, "Oh, sure, you can." Uh so there was that out there, but as the dust settles, the Kraken right now, as you say, in last place. But no, I don't think you'll get as many biggest crowds as you're getting now, but I think you'll eventually find a nice healthy crowd because Seattle does have a long history of supporting hockey. Let's say, well, it's got to be what 17,000 is a sellout, and kind of guessing here. I think you probably go down to 11. And what I mean by that is on a bad night. You know what I mean? On a dark, rainy Seattle night.
We have a few of those.
Yeah, right. And it's not the greatest team. It's two last place teams. I don't. You might find 12,000, and if they're still in last place, if you will, because there's a solid fan base. And then, of course, the big nights you're playing, the Vancouver Canucks, you know what I'm saying, on the Montreal Canadiens and, what have you. Sure, it'll be a sellout. So, nah, I mean, I think you'll get a healthy following, which enough for the front office not to be concerned. You know what I mean? For the attendance to go down and you're like, what do we got to do now? So, I kind of like the Mariners, if you will. You know what I mean? But I think their fan base, and I'm skipping over, but the Mariners fan base is kind of went up. I think you'll always have active hockey fans as opposed to casual ones that'll wait and see. You'll have more active that'll go to the games, and there'll be enough of those for it to be a good product and for it to be a self-sustaining financial operation.
And something else, Mazvita, you probably agree at this point, is the Kraken ownership and management. They've proven to be very savvy sports marketing and quality control people. So I have confidence that the Kraken ownership group would not accept having a team that's in continual last place or towards the bottom kind of hockey.
No, absolutely. Todd Lightwicki and that whole group. I mean, their expectation is to win the Stanley Cup. You know what I mean? And so they're willing to put in and do whatever it takes in terms of draft picks and financial contracts and things like that. They want to make sure they're committed to putting a competitive team on there, because it doesn't matter who it is. If you're not competitive after a while, fans aren't. It's not gonna happen. They're gonna go their own way.
We'll have to see. We'll have to see. It'll be interesting to see how the Kraken improve, and if so, at what level. And there are some unanswered questions, but your points are thoughtful. All right, I got a more heavier question for you, Mazvita. I'm going to bring this one on, and
Sure.
I'm reading that with the China Winter Olympics, the United States is planning to send its Olympic athletes, but not send a formal diplomatic mission, heavily due to some human rights issues going on with the government of China. Now, back in 1980, some believed that President Carter should have allowed the American athletes to compete in the 80 Moscow Olympics, but did it under protest. What do you think about this idea of the U.S. Sending our athletes, but not sending a formal diplomatic mission?
Uh I like it. I mean, I think that the process. I'm assuming the process was you talk to the different individual Olympic bodies inside the United States, right, and say, uh, do you all want to go? It comes on on the auspices of you don't want to penalize the athletes. If the athletes want to go, then let them, because given all that that they practiced and everything else. Um, it's a little bit of a political football, and you
Political
depending on
football. I'm going to steal that line from you, Maz. So
yeah, that's an old one.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, and that's what it is. I mean, you can say, well, yeah, we're gonna pull our diplomats and make sure and all those things, but you can't really do that because your consulate, you got to make sure that you've got officials that are there from the government just in case something goes wrong. You know what I mean? So, all you're doing is, if I'm aware, is you're just pulling you're closing the consulates. You know what I mean? The embassies, if you will. And then you let then you can say, well, we don't want to penalize the athletes, and so we want them to play, and it's up to them. They worked really hard.
Then you got the COVID issues. The NHL's decided not to allow the NHL players to play in the hockey phase of the 2022 Olympics in Beijing. So the COVID's out there too, isn't it?
Yeah, and Paul, now I'll do a hot take. I mean, I think if you're gonna do in terms of human rights, I think you can whatever. But I think if you're going COVID, I don't think you should have the Olympics.
Gotcha. So for COVID reasons, you could support the United States deciding not to send our athletes this year. Then
I think the whole, which is another, the Olympic as a whole Olympic body is a whole other discussion we could talk about. But
true.
It would have to be unified. I mean, I think if it's just the United States, then no. But I guess my point is it if you see the NHL saying we're not sending our $1 million athletes out there because of COVID reasons,
right?
What does that say about each of the countries saying, well, the amateur athletes, and they're not amateur, they get paid, they have contracts, but for them to say, well, they can go, is it a COVID risk or not?
Lot there. You know what? When I think about Olympic Games, I think about the 1936 Nazi Olympics in Berlin when the United States sent a delegation and Jesse Owens had those Olympic gold medals he got. So those are complex issues. Do you send athletes to a city hosting, to a rogue government, a city in a rogue government that's hosting Olympics? So those are tough issues.
Yeah, I mean, and the Jesse was more in terms of, I think Hitler was on the forefront, and his whole concept was the whole injustice and racism that he felt, and he wanted to prove his agenda in terms of this inferior race. So I'm going to be on the front end. And I'd say, you know what? And if you, at that time, the U.S. Olympic, you're like, you know what? Okay, we got some athletes we're going to send there to offset this kind of message that you're trying to do. And I would say that, Jesse Owens, people say that in terms it was just for the blacks, African Americans, but you know what? Now, come on, you got to remember Hitler's message just wasn't about, African Americans and all of that, right? I mean, that's not what Hitler's message was about. It was just all, right? It was just all these people. If you weren't the Aryan race and you weren't that, you were inferior, and we all know what history had to say. So I would just a quick shout out to say what Jesse Owens did was just not only for the African Americans and the black, but it was for all non-Aryan individuals, and that's why I thought it was good to send, Jesse Owens and what the United States did back then.
Well, it was a real triumph what Jesse did in the 36 Olympics. I will comment that a lot of historians have some complex views of whether we should have sent a athletic delegation to 36 Olympics. That's a whole nother conversation, and there's a lot of speculation about if we didn't do it, what could have happened and all that. But a lot there. I got one more pretty heavier topic, and then we'll try to move to some. Bring it on. I got some other topics aren't quite as heavy, but there a lot of attention is going on this week with the who some say is the greatest tennis player in the world, Novak. I may not pronounce his last name very well. Djokvovic. I'm sorry, I'm bundling his last. Djokovic. Yeah, I'm completely bundling his last name. I'll just call him Novak D for these purposes. There's a story that broke today that he apparently did not isolate right away after he got COVID. There's a big discussion about whether Australia should pull his visa. There's an allegation over a false declaration. What do you think? Should Australia pull his visa and get him out of there? Where do you stand on this whole thing with the great tennis player Novak D?
I think if I was the Joker, that's his name. I would pull out.
You think
Djokovic.
Australia should just tell him you're not welcome in our country?
No, 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 no. I'm saying he should pull out.
Oh, he should pull out. Okay.
He
Okay.
should pull out. Absolutely. I think at some point, this is now, it's tainting for me who he is. And I like Djokovic, and just watching him, kind of, when he beat Sampras's record, and he's going on and, beating Agassi and everybody else. And then obviously Federer and his climb. And I always like that. But this is the thing. He's now at a point where you are the face of tennis, And so is this about you and winning? It's more just about you winning and how you're doing.
But isn't he refusing to pull out, Muzz, though? That's
No,
my understanding, So I don't think he's going to voluntarily pull out. That's my
No,
understanding.
no, no. You asked me what I think.
Yeah.
I think he should pull out. Now,
Gotcha.
if we want to have that discussion in terms of what the government should do.
Yeah.
So right now, the latest thing that came out, like you're saying, from the New York Times, I read it this morning. So he's coming out and saying, well, I had this false negative, and then I went to a basketball game, and then I took this false, but then it became positive, and then I did a photo shoot. And I'm like, come on, man. Your integrity is on the line. The government, so where they're at now is the minister, right? The Australian foreign minister is debating whether, no, you shouldn't play. They should definitely send him home, because part of what came out today was also he lied in terms of on the falsifying documents. You are absolutely giving privilege to this guy. You're absolutely giving privilege. And it's a mixed message in terms of what you told your people, in terms of their COVID restrictions and everything else. At the beginning, maybe the Australian Association, I think tennis is just, please, let's not go there. I think the whole tennis thing is all about money, some old people that need to move and get off there, whether it's Wimbledon.
Tennis associations have their issues, no doubt about it.
They've got major issues, and I'll take one more minute of the airtime, but they
No,
got major
please
issues.
do.
And they've got to go. They really have got to go. They're controlled of power. We saw that with Wimbledon. We saw that with Nasoka. With the women and the continual what they do with Serena Williams. Stop it. Just stop it. You know what I mean? And same thing with Djokovic. I think that had he not lied, you could have made a point. You know what I'm saying? But now the guy is lying. It's obvious, and it's become more about tennis. It become political. It's just become a political buffoonery. And oh, by the way, again, it demeans, I think, the Australian Open, which Rod Laver took years to establish as as one of the the marquee tennis events. And now this is all going to be remembered by it. So. There you go, Paul. You asked. I had to give
a lot there. Real quickly, one of my Facebook friends, Alan Johnson, commented that you were his Laurelhurst Parks Department basketball coach at one time. So I just got a post that Alan Johnson who I know wanted to mention that. So.
Oh, good looking out. Hey, is he still practicing his free throws?
Yeah. I know he's a big sailor, has a lovely wife, Sharon, but anyway, I just saw that.
Oh, that's awesome.
Alan had a comment there.
Oh,
yeah, a lot there. And we'll move on from this discussion about Novak D. But one thought I have is there's a lot of resentment when you have like athletes and movie stars who seem to think they should have exemptions from normal laws and codes that others should have. And this story, I think, reflects that in many, many ways.
There's privilege. There's absolutely privilege. And we know it happens, but when you're caught in a lie, that's the issue. So.
Well, it looks like he may have been at least misleading to some extent. I will give a lawyerly answer to that. But hey, total.
Am I leading the witness, Your Honor?
Yeah, there you go. A total 180 shift, Mazvita. I've asked this question to several recent guests. since over the last few months. What is your favorite sports movie? And I'm going to mention one. We're talking about tennis. I thought the Battle of the Sexes that came out a couple years ago about Bobby Riggs's famous tennis match against Billie Jean King is kind of an underrated sports movie. May not be my favorite, but that was a good one. So anyhow, but what would be your favorite sports movie, Maz?
Dang, sports movie. Good Lord. Uh, Heck, I think the one with Sylvester Stallone. I'm gonna go
Rocky.
there. No. I mean, Rocky is there. Rocky's there. There's no. Yeah, okay. If you count that, Rocky is there, the original one. But I think the one where they were prisoner of war camp. Him and a couple other people. I forget. I'd have to Google
Rambo?
it.
Not Rambo. That was
No,
a
no,
good
no, no,
sports
no.
movie.
They end up playing a soccer game
Oh,
against
okay.
the captors, and then of course they win, and then they break out of the prison. So, but you know what? Just for the sake of simplicity, Rocky, obviously. Yeah, the one Costner, they were fine, but yeah, I'll go with Rocky.
Rocky's a
The
good
first
choice.
one.
Rocky's a
Yeah,
good choice.
I'll
Yeah.
go with the first one.
There's some good ones. I have a book on sports movies that came out about 15 years ago. So I've been on a little sports movies high horse. Alan Johnson just commented. He says Hoosiers. So
Yes,
that's a good
yeah.
one.
Hoosier's a classic one. Slapshot is a classic one. Now
Definitely.
that you got me going, and I would also say James Caan Rollerball. I like that.
I
The
just
James
watched
Caan.
that one recently. I just watched Rollerball, and I think I'd love to get James Caan on my show. Talk about Brian's Song and Rollerball because he's
Oh,
been in a bunch of
there you
sports
go.
movies. So
Brian's Song is another one.
that's a good one.
Yeah. There you go. Thank you for pulling that out. Yeah.
There's so many, it's hard to pick one, but I wanted to throw out that tennis movie for fun since we were talking a little tennis talk. All right, I got a couple more questions from Mazvita. These are two questions I've been asking guests since about late 2019, and we can call this the Paul Schneiderman questions, but I can't help it. I enjoy these two questions, and I get wonderful answers. Who is a living sports figure that you would love to interview? It could be a coach, general manager, player, whatever. And who is a deceased figure in sports history you would have loved to have chatted with or interviewed?
Mm, 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 mm.
Surviving and
Who?
deceased.
Yeah, surviving and deceased. I'm trying to one I haven't interviewed. I'm trying to
I give
think.
you some clues that some other guests have said. You want me to give you a few clues to those questions?
Kinda. Go ahead. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, for living sports figures, I've received Floyd Merriweather, Sandy Koufax, Willie Mays, Charles Barkley, Serena Williams, all sorts of names have come up. And for deceased sports figures, I've received Babe Ruth, and your friend from Roosevelt, Mark Pattison, had a great answer. He answered Sir Edmund Hillary, I think was the first man to climb Mount Everest. Hank Aaron. Alan Dershowitz, the famous attorney, mentioned he loved to have chatted with some of the famous Negro baseball players like Josh Gibson. I've got some great answers to those two questions. So I figured I'd throw you a couple clues.
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah, that'll roll. Seychelles Page would have been kind of cool.
Mm-hmm. Definitely.
Jesse Owens, without a doubt.
Great answer.
This is a flex or not, but I mean, I did have lunch with Muhammad Ali, so I would, you know what I mean? That
Wow.
I would do it again.
That's a story. Have to hear about that. When was
Yeah.
that? When did you have lunch with Ali?
Goodwill Games. I was working for Cairo. I mean, for King Radio, when King Radio hosted a Goodwill Games, and so
1990.
Yeah.
Gosh,
So
you met him and had lunch with him.
yeah, as a
Was he
producer,
friendly?
he was incredible. His ambiance, and it was the thing that was amazing about him is he made me feel like I was important. Like his aura and everything else had me feeling that I was important, which, you and I, like you've interviewed a lot of people, and, Patterson's like that too, but there's certain people that you're like, wow. And yet they create a space where you feel like, wow, you're important, not less than.
It's always nice to meet any person, Mazvita, whether they're famous or not, that takes a little interest in the other person. Unfortunately, a lot of people are not like that.
Yeah,
So
yeah. No, especially genuine
right.
in a way. I'm trying to think.
Great, yeah. Well, Jesse Owens is a great name of it, and Satchel Paige are great names of deceased athletes that you'd love to chat with. You met Muhammad Ali. Let's go to
Paul.
surviving. Let's go back to surviving.
Oh,
Who you'd
okay.
love to
But I'll
chat with?
throw out Paul Gasconi. But surviving.
A
What's
living sports figure you just love
yeah,
to chat with.
living. You know what? And I'll give you this one. You should think about. We could talk about it. But Michael Chang, who lives tennis player, who lives in Mercer Island.
That's a
Love to
great
talk.
name. I haven't heard his
Yeah,
name come up. Yeah.
yeah.
Pattison answered Jimmy Connors to that question. He thought that was a living sports figure. Love to chat with is Jimmy Connors, but Michael Chang's a great name.
I've talked with. I don't know what I'm talking about. I talked with Pete Sampras and
Wow.
what's his name, Knucklehead, who's always yelling and everything else.
McEnroe.
McEnroe, yeah, interviewed him as well, so he was awesome. But
Wow, those are big names, Maz.
well, yeah, look. Let me answer the question. I'm not trying to flex.
Well, I'm digressing too because I'm having so
Yeah,
much
no,
fun chatting
that
with you
well,
right now. I'll shut up for a second.
no. Please, I thank you again. It's great to be on your show. I'm just even trying to go to what sport. Alex Ferguson, of course. I would. I'm going. I'm like
Willie Mays would be an incredible living sports figure to chat with.
Yeah. Ricky Henderson.
That's a great name, Ricky Henderson. Yeah.
Would be a good one. Basketball. I think Steph Curry. Curry would be a good one. Oh no, forget them all. Steve Kerr.
Steve Kerr. That's who you'd pick of all these names of living sports figures.
Now, do you know the story about Steve Kerr? About his dad?
Yeah, in Beirut. Yeah,
You of course you would know. You know what I'm saying? And then everything he's seen. That's right. Steve Kerr is one way up there.
He's the one you'd pick of the living sports figures love to chat with. Yeah,
yes.
You great names. Ricky Henderson, Michael Chang, but you would pick Steve Kerr.
I would die to have a discussion with Steve Kerr.
That's a great name. Love it. Paul Schneiderman, host of the Sports Untold podcast, also on Rainier Avenue Radio with my Rainier Avenue Radio fellow host, Mazvita Maraire. All right, Mazvita, we're going to shift for a minute to the college playoff issue with college football. And I read the New York Times piece about this yesterday, that the powers that be, the major conference figures and all the bigwigs of college football are having trouble coming up with a plan for college football playoffs. Right now, it's basically like a Final Four system. You take the top four, and that's pretty much it. Now, I want to ask you about this proposal. One proposal calls for a 12-team playoff where the six highest-ranked conferences their conference championship would be among the six, and then the next six would be the six next highest ranked teams. Do you like that proposal? Taking the top six conference champions and the next six best teams?
Simply put, I think winning your conference should mean something. There's no doubt about that. I think the big Power Five. I don't know what the sixth one would be, but the big Power Five, you win your conference championship, then you get a seeding.
And when I read that, I'm with you. I wasn't quite sure. Maybe it was a typo. Are they talking about the top five conferences, the top six? We normally hear about the Power Five, but maybe they want to add a six, the sixth best conference into it. But I don't know. I mean, I got some mixed opinions about this whole thing. You may think I sound kind of outdated. I still have a soft spot for the bowl games. And one reason is I like seeing some of these mid-sized cities or cities that are not really on the national map all the time, like maybe El Paso, Texas, Shreveport, Louisiana, have a chance to host a bowl game. There's something about that I like. Am I thinking too much like the 1970s, 1980s?
I don't think that it would make the bowl games irrelevant.
True.
You know what I mean?
True.
I think you're already there now, and that's why you're teetering on the knife edge, so to speak. Because players now that are playing in the Holiday Bowl might, you saw what happened to Alabama, the receiver, you know what I mean? And these knuckleheads, talking heads on TV, as you kind of glanced over, like, well, if you're not playing for national championship, you shouldn't be playing. I'm like, no, 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 no. I think the expansion makes some of those bowl games relevant. I'm with you. Bowl games serve as a reward for the teams that aren't, in the playoffs. I mean, I do, and expansion should happen sooner than later. It's all about money, and obviously the powers don't want, they want to keep the money down south, if you will. Alabama, Georgia, LSU. Let's just make sure both of those are in. But
Pretty good game the other night for sure. But you like the top. You like a top 12 system for the college football playoffs.
yeah, they're probably gonna go to a top 8. I thought the best game I saw was the Rose Bowl. So you know what I mean? Like, I don't know about you, but going back for
I love the Rose Bowl. I love it. I'm a Rose Bowl fan.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it must be a Roosevelt thing, because even back when we played, that was the thing. You know what I mean? Like, you went to like Damon Jones and met up with Patterson. Everybody went to somebody's house and watched the Rose Bowl, and that was always kind of you know,
The granddaddy wall. I went to the Ohio State Washington game in January 2019. I think of that as a whole different era, before all the pandemic craziness happened. I had a heck of a time. Unfortunately, Washington beat Ohio State, but I still have a soft spot for the Rose Bowl. But there's another proposal I heard, Mazvita, is to have to take the top 6 for the college football playoffs and give the top 2 a bye. Do you like a system like that?
that probably, and I think it's a top 6 because, Paul, they will take somebody from a non-power 5.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
And they would be in the top 6. So,
Right.
I like the buy. I do, because what it does is slots down. It brings back that, because now you can bring in two teams, 2 bowl games are relevant. You know what I'm saying? Like, if you have the non-bye, your bowl game's only going to be 12. This way, they sit out, and then you go ahead and you do one side of the bracket, one on the other side, just like they do in basketball. Let's just get it over with already. Jeez. You know what I mean?
It's been going on for years how to figure out the college football playoff system. I don't know. The one thing about having taking the top 6 and giving the top 2 a bye, there definitely be controversies, Mazvita, who the top 2 teams are that should get the bye. That'd be a whole new issue that could come up in some years.
We'll take your number 1, number 2. Yeah, I don't think if you go 6-4, I mean, I think you have to go 8 or 12 to give the top 2 a bye. And I think you just go by your, at the end of this, the bowl rank. I mean, whatever they are, the BCS 1, 2, boom, the way you go.
See if they can get it figured out. It's been going on a long time. All right, Mazvita, you got time for a few more questions?
Absolutely,
Great,
sir.
great. So the Seahawks went 7-10 this year, and I'm getting a few of these points from Larry Stone's recent column. Was a 7-10 season an aberration or part of an unstoppable decline of the Seahawks? That's how Larry Stone posed it. Got to make sure I attribute my sources, So what do you think?
Larry's I call him an old G, but he always says because he's the old G reporter, but he said he's not the oldest because Art Teal is. But to answer your question, it's an aberration. People forget who won the NFC West last year. Seahawks.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, I would say it's an aberration. Have Pete tell it, right? Quarterback was out for 4 games. Their top running back was also, Chris Carson. You went through that. The center position, Fuller and Posick, that battle never materialized early, and in the end, Posick won it. And it just took a year for them to get Waldron's offense. Shane, as the offensive, they just didn't play. I'm drinking the Kool-Aid. They didn't have enough reps during early on in the season to get into their playbook. Later on, they did, and you saw that. The Rashard Penny resurgence obviously helped. Defense, I think, they missed.
Do you give Penny a big contract, Mazvita?
What's that?
Do you give Rashard Penny a big contract now, based on his impressive performances this season?
I think you re-sign him. I don't know about a big contract. I think it's either a 2-year contract. You guarantee the first year. You give him a big sign-in bonus. You know what I mean? Because he's gonna want a little. He said it yesterday. He said, "Hey, he's gonna look out their business decision, but he wants to stay here." So you give him a fair contract. I mean, you don't give him a home. Don't do the home. What is it? The home discount. You know what I'm saying? The home team
Hometown
discount. But
discount. Yeah, I've heard that. Yeah, in football.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. You
yeah.
give him 2 years, and the third one, we'll negotiate with that. Because this year he was like he played his. You didn't pick up his fourth year this year, and he showed you that what he's worth it. So yes, you re-sign him.
Do you bring back Russell Wilson, Pete Carroll, and John Schneider?
They are coming back. There was never any nothing like that. Jody Allen is a billionaire. Paul, you're a lawyer. Lawyers and billionaires do their homework. They
Not
know
all.
exact they know exactly what's going on. They understand value. So yeah, if nothing else, you bring the band for one more run.
And it's really amazing. This was in the Seattle Times this week. I think in Bob Condotta's column. The Seahawks are the only NFC team to score more points than they allow, or the only losing NFC team to score more points than they allowed. A 29-point differential, which is interesting. And the Hawks did well, didn't do well with this point differential with a 7-10 record. The Mariners, meanwhile, win 90 games, and my gosh, think it's just so it's sort of interesting in Seattle sports in 2021. There was a little difference in the point differential issue between the Mariners and the Seahawks, or run differential in baseball. But
Yeah.
little observation there. Tom Brady, 2021 Sports Illustrated Sportsman of the Year. My gosh, could Brady be the 2022 Sports Person of the Year? I mean, just pretty incredible what Tom Brady is doing, isn't it?
It's shady, but okay. Yeah, yeah, he's absolutely, absolutely. I What I like about Brady is his determination, much more than anything else. His ability to play with that chip on his shoulder at a high level, I think is one of those things. That's what makes him so great, one of the greatest. You know what I mean? I mean, it's that high performance from whether it was where he was drafted to leaving the Patriots and all of that stuff. Absolutely. I don't think I'd give him 2022.
I got a thought on Brady, and feel free to challenge me on this. It kind of bugs me that Brady got nailed in the whole Deflategate thing. And he's denied it, but the evidence I think was pretty strong that he messed around with the ball. Then you have guys like Bonds and Clemens in baseball that will never get over this steroid stigma, and those two guys were actually acquitted in their criminal cases. So I don't know. Is it apples and oranges that Brady just seems to escape a lot of scrutiny on this whole Deflategate thing? But you have some baseball players that seem to be never get over the steroids allegations.
Leadership in terms of who the commissioner is on both of those and understanding the value, and then turning on their players. I like the current commissioner because he understood the value of Brady and everything else, and you knew that was going to happen. But I thought the baseball commissioner, it was shameful because that generated money. Chicks love chick chicks love the long ball. You know what I mean? And so you rode with that and everything else. But they also, I mean, one was the allegations were pretty, yeah, baseball's, Paul, we should talk about this some other day. Baseball's always kind of set their own rules and they're so archaic. I mean, I'm not saying if you're cheating that it's okay. Trying to get a competitive advantage is fine. If you're caught, then go right ahead. And that's what Brady should have been, the same thing. And that I agree with you. These guys were never really caught. Like you said, it was acquitted. Fine. Get over it and move forward for the good of your game, just like the NFL got it. Okay, boom. The NFL always gets that.
And I don't believe Clemens and Bonds ever formally tested positive
Right.
for,
Right.
for roids. I'm not saying those guys don't have any culpability, but putting on the proof hat, it's a little weak. But that's a whole other conversation.
No, we agree, Paul. We absolutely agree.
So,
Yeah.
well, I got another question for the audience. Lucius, can you put up that question? Thank you. So, from Dre Burshane, a friend, big sports fan, Dre asks, who should the Seahawks draft in the second, third, and who should their 2 fourth-round picks be? He also has a question about Iowa State running back Brees Hall as maybe being a prospective draft pick. So you want to try to field those questions that Draper Shane has asked
Yeah,
Mazvita?
I don't know. Geez, you got some smart sport fans. I don't know if I can
They helped
say
me a lot, that's for sure.
yeah, I haven't done the pre-draft, but I can say what position they need. And he is right. Nicely said in terms of you do need to draft a running back, right? So what you're going to the running back position, you bring in Rashard Penny, you draft somebody, and then you're probably going to get a veteran. I don't think Chris Carson is going to come back. I will be, I mean, I'm not there, but that neck injury is lingering, and it's just one of those things that, as you
Tough
know,
injury.
so, yeah, it's a tough injury. So, okay, so what do you need? Your receivers are pretty well set. Late round, you would pick up a receiver again. Get a running back early, and then get a wide receiver later because you just want a competitive advantage there. I mean, your three are set in terms of Metcalf and Lockett, but I don't know Freddie Swain. You know what I'm saying? But DK Estridge he's ready. So you're bringing someone for competitive advantage. So you got
Brees
the
Hall's a name that Dre brought up, an Iowa State running back. I frankly know nothing about him, but that was a name
yeah, no,
that
yes,
he brought
yes,
up. So,
yeah, good
um,
player. I would do that. I would get him early. I would get him in one of your top three picks that you have, um, and then your defensive line. I think that's really where you got to try to figure that out. Linebackers, I think you're okay, but D line was probably. I would use my first pick on a D line, the second round pick on a D line, because of Dunlap did well, Puna Ford. You shifted people in and out, but you got to try to get a stud that maybe not ready now, but ready, but is effective next year. And your cornerback, uh, right now you got to pick a free safety because of Quandre Diggs. I mean, I think he's fine and everything else, but you know, uh, organizations you rebuild, so you got to pick a cornerbacks definitely and a free safety.
and no first round
Um,
draft pick this year. And I don't know, Mazvita, what you think of this. It just seems like the Seahawks sure gave up a lot of their future to get Jamal Adams, but that's
it
you
didn't
know,
seem like that last season, did it?
no, but it sure looks.
But it seems like that this season.
And in Seattle sports circles, it's starting to look almost like the Mariners' infamous Eric Bedard trade back in the 2008 days. Remember we traded like 5 players for Bedard? I
Oh,
don't know.
that's right.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah. So
I
it's
don't. I mean, I would say,
in some
uh,
ways.
I think he'll be fine. I think the thing is you've got to teach him to play that Mike linebacker. That position where he's playing the run, which he can do well, but what he drops, you almost want him to be a linebacker. And if you can do that, we started to see that. And having not rushed, him drop back 10 yards, right? I think he'll be fine. He's one of the most energetic, athletic players
Oh,
that you
no
have.
doubt. It just seemed like we gave up a lot for him. Well, Masvita, this may be my final question. If I get you back one day, we can hit more on the Mariners and the Storm and the Huskies. We hit a lot of topics today, but when I get you back, we can hit on some more stuff. So hopefully you will do that. So here's my
I'd
final
love to.
question for you today, and this is another controversial question. So I had the sports writer author Jeff Pearlman on my show a couple years ago. He's written books on the Lakers and the Mets, and very good sports writer. Wrote a book on the USFL. And Jeff is very provocative, very strong, very opinionated guy. So here was Jeff's tweet the other day. It's about the Miami Dolphins getting permission to talk to Dan Quinn to prospectively be their coach. Let me read you Jeff's tweet and tell me what you think. Here's what Perlman tweeted. This is the most incredible shit ever. Ever. In a league that's 70% African American, most teams would rather go through the white reach reads than give young, impressive, successful black assistants a shot. It is beyond racism. It is racism at this point. It's racism. What do you think of Perlman's tweet on Dan Quinn getting the opportunity to have chats with the Dolphins about being their coach?
I mean, we all agree with that. I mean, that's it. It is. It's racism. Right? Why are they looking for a head coach? Why is Miami looking for a head coach? I mean, he went out there and they won. They were 8-1 with in the stretch. So, the NFL, they're still wanting the Rooney Rule's not working, so they're still out there hiring somebody that looks, talks like them, and so I think it'll be interesting to see a couple of different spots. I like what the Giants did. What we want to look at is
Is it fair of Jeff to call Dan Quinn a retreat? Is that a little harsh?
it's not harsh. I mean, what's a retread, right? I mean,
Retread,
I mean,
retreat,
he's coached
retreat.
before and he's getting recycled. That's what you do in the NFL. And the interesting thing is to watch is how many black general managers, because that's the key, right? That's where the racism is, and that's where it sticks. It's a human condition and natural thing for me to hire somebody I'm comfortable with that looks like me, talks like me because of the $1 billion owner behind me, and all they want is for me to win. So I ain't got time to be trying to we shall overcome all of that,
And a
which
lot of the owners, most of the owners are white pro-Trump guys too. We got to keep kind of their
I don't know if they're
philosophies.
pro
And,
Trump. I
you know.
wouldn't go that way. But they want to protect their money. They want
Yeah,
to
oh, I know.
protect
I
their
was just pointing out ideologically and philosophically where a lot of these owners are coming from. It is what it is. I mean, I'm just, it doesn't mean they're all racist, but anyway, that's a whole other conversation. I'm sure some of my listeners are going to say, Paul, where you going on that? But hey, whatever it
Well,
is.
I mean, Paul.
So,
I mean, look. I mean, I can go further.
yeah.
It's a plantation based league.
Well, you're not the only one that feels that way, but I thought that Perlman's tweet would get you talking.
Yeah. I mean, we've been. Yeah. That's not the. Yeah, it's ongoing. It's been ongoing every year. We see it all the time. Vance Joseph all the time.
And I have a soft spot for Dan Quinn. I thought he was a pretty good Seahawks defensive coordinator. But at the same time, as you pointed out, he's just sort of a typical former coach that a lot of the owners would look at again to be a coach. So.
And there's nothing against Dan Quinn. I think we want to be really careful. Nothing to do with Dan Quinn. It just goes back to the basic look, who am I comfortable with? You know what I'm saying? That's what it comes down to. Dan Quinn, good luck and hope he gets the job. I mean, that's nothing to do with Dan Quinn. It's the system and the structure.
Perlman, though, in his tweet used Dan Quinn as his example, though. That's kind of where.
Well, yeah, no, but yeah, the structure is set, and
Right.
Dan Quinn is an example. The
Gotcha.
root cause, I mean, it's set up. And so he just happens to be the next one, but it's happening everywhere. You know what I'm saying? It's not just with Miami. I mean, it's, like I said, we'll see what happens with the Giants.
You bring up some points. There are questions how well the Rooney Rule has worked. There have been more African American head coaches in recent years, but it's still a problem. So
Well, there's only been two, and the classic thing about that is, real quickly is right. I mean, there's allegations that came up, but the questions that they're asking him are so ridiculous, and it wasn't meant for just to reach a benchmark and a quota. But the point is, when you take the Rooney Rule and you saw what happened in Miami, this is it. Last one hired is the first one fired. That's the issue.
Lot there. Well, Mazvita, you got me thinking a lot today, and you got the listeners and viewers thinking as well. A lot of great points. So thank you so much for coming on Sports Untold. I really appreciate you being a guest today, and you and I will definitely be in touch. And let's have a good New Year too, Mazvita.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Paul. Can I get you on the other side too? Well, on the Seattle Sports.
I don't want to hurt your good ratings, but I would consider it. Sure. So.
All right, bring your listeners. We need a few of them. Thanks you so much.
Thanks, Mazvita. We'll be in touch. All right, you take care. Let's have a good 2022. Thanks.
All right, thanks.
You too.